Welcome to the Afghanistan Project Podcast. I'm Beth Bailey, and today I'm excited to continue our series on the Afghanistan withdrawal by talking with a group of Americans and Afghans who worked together to evacuate allies from Hamid Karzai International Airport in August 2021. Anna Segur is an employee of the University of Colorado with a background in international affairs, and she's been working to support refugees, particularly Iraqi and Afghan special immigrant visa applicants, since 2016. Val Simich is a U.S. Navy veteran who began supporting refugees during the Syrian refugee crisis in 2015, and Val and Anna started working together in 2016 during their work assisting refugees in Greece. We're also joined by Afzil, who worked for 2 years as an army interpreter and was in Kabul as an English teacher at the time of the fall of the country to the Taliban on August 15th, 2021. As well as Sayed Siddiqui, who has a very long history of working with the U.S. Army and the DEA as an interpreter in Afghanistan, and who was teaching English to Air Force Academy students in 2021 when the country fell. So thank you all for joining us today, and I know that this is going to be a really incredible time hearing about your efforts together.
Thank you. Thank you, Beth.
Thank you.
Well, I think the best way to start out would be, Anna, let's talk about you're kind of the coalescing force of a lot of this effort. When did you start, trying to move people out of Afghanistan? When did you realize that, the withdrawal was coming and things needed to start moving?
I saw kind of in the news about the agreement in Doha, and then I didn't see any action or any uptick in the kind of the relocation of the SIVs. So by March, I really saw that the time has run out. There's 80,000 SIVs waiting there, and it doesn't seem, there's no way they're going to be able to move 80,000 people in 3 months before the handover takes place. So I have been trying to contact politicians in the United States to urge them to kind of speed up their timetable or put greater importance on evacuating our allies that had partnered with us. Got no response. But then in August, I really started getting all the kind of panicked messages from all the cases that I've been working on, like if the Taliban takes over and the U.S. Army's gone, I'm going to get killed. They're going to hunt me down. What can you help me? Can you help me get out?
How many people would you say did you have that you were looking at that time?
It started, I don't know, maybe I had 150 between all the cases that I was working on, but then they would mention somebody else who would mention somebody else, so it kind of ballooned.
And at that point, Val, is that around when you stepped in to try to help move things along, or how did you get involved?
I reached out to Anna. I woke up, I believe it was August 16th or 17th. I woke up to the horrible images of people falling off of planes. And I thought about Anna and her cases immediately. And so I reached out and I asked her, how I could help or what was going on, if there's anything I could do. And she just gave me a list of people and a Google form. It was an evacuation request form that was put together that same day probably by someone in Congress to kind of keep track of who was still in the country and who needed to get out. And she was start contacting people and filling out the forms for them. And that's what I started doing.
And so
I pretty much immediately realized it was ridiculous. It was not good. We were just wasting our time filling out forms.
Yeah, so. That's how I felt at first. I was filling out forms for for days on my computer, reaching out to people. Sayed was one of the first people I contacted, and yeah, it was. We were so worried.
Were those forms at all helpful? When you I guess we can talk about that as we go through the natural progression of how this all played out. But I would love to know down the line if those forms actually did help with you guys getting to the U.S. No, not at all helpful.
I think a few people that submitted it, that we submitted it, especially those that were further ahead in the SIV process, they started receiving, I believe, like the day after, or maybe 2 days after, they all received the same email from a government, State Department.
No, that had nothing to do with our form, because I have interpreters in the Netherlands who had already been evacuated in June, so I didn't fill out the form for it, and they got that generic visa form.
It was a generic visa, and we were like, does that have to do with the form? And they were just like, show up to Abbey Gate and show them this email, and we'll let you in, pretty much, good luck. And so I was like, okay, maybe that's a way for them to get in, and then Sayed, I think he got one, and he tried with that, and he was like, there's no way, like, I'm going to die. He was there for hours until midnight. Taliban was beating people up. People were out in the sun, stuck in the crowds for hours. Like up to 12 hours. We had some of our interpreters.
I had like another volunteer who had contacted me saying like they wanted to help out. I told him, I was like, here's the form, here's a list of people, and he was like, no, this can't be real. This is not the U.S. government. Like, it's a Google form. Like, the U.S. government is not this disorganized. The U.S. government knows what they're doing. They would not create a Google form. And I was just like,
the funny thing.
Yeah.
The funny thing is that actually the U.S. government was less organized than that, because how many times have we heard about stories about, well, you need this document to get in. Oh, no, you need this. It was always changing the document that you needed to be able to get through the gates and all these things. And how interesting. I think it's been said a lot on this podcast, but it's the events of this withdrawal are what made me lose faith in my government. So, but I'd love to hear, okay, Sayed and Afzal, let's go to where you were at this time. I don't know which of you wants to start. I'll choose. Sayed, we just were talking about you at the gate. So how about, can you tell us, August 15th, where were you and what happened in the next few days for you?
And August 15th, as I first said, I was in a classroom in Air Force Academy. I was trying to help the Afghan Air Force cadets to learn English. So I was in the class. It was almost around 2 p.m. that my manager came to the classroom and said, you have to leave because Taliban have taken the control of the capital, Kabul. And I was like, is that a joke? He was, no, seriously, because that was only him and me left. Nobody else were there. I was with my class, so that was all. So we left the Air Force Academy. I had to walk like almost an hour and a half to get home. So due to the crowd, there were thousands of cars on the street. Nobody was able to get a taxi, so I had to walk. When I got home, it was almost around 4 something or 4:30 that I received the first WhatsApp message from one of my previous supervisor, Major Mo, which we call him Major Mo. He texted me and said, Sayed, are you safe? And I was like, yeah, I'm still safe, but I don't know what this thing is gonna take me to or where. He said, don't worry, we're gonna try to get you out of the country. And he also told me that he needed time. So that was the first thing. I tried to stay safe back home, so I told each single of the family, even the children, that if anybody comes and asks for me, avoid to tell them that I am mad. Tell them that he's not home. So at the same time, I was receiving text messages via WhatsApp from different my different supervisors. They were just telling me that stay safe. That was the only messages that they were telling me: stay safe, uh, go and get yourself into hideouts. Um, then I think later on, it was a couple of nights later, that Andres called me. Was in the middle of night, our night back Afghanistan. It was almost around 2 o'clock a.m. So I was asleep and I couldn't answer his phone calls. So he knew one of my other friends. So Andres reached him and told him to call me and let me know that Andres was gonna help me to get out of the country. Uh, so I think it was the morning of the next day that I called Andres back, and we talked about this. He said that we have a team. We're going to help you get evacuated, but try to reach this number, which was Valentina's number. And the sooner I received it, I saved it, and I just sent her a text message, and I was like, hi. And I went through the whole process. I introduced myself, which I'm really thankful and I really appreciate for what she did to me. So I was staying home, but I was not going out. I received an email with a blank visa, no name, nothing on that, and from SIV. I think it was UCIS, I don't know what it stands for, to get to one of the gates and show them the visa. You will be entered, you will be in, and it may help you out. But that was the time that I, with the 3 little kids, a newborn baby who was just a week or 9 days old, something like that, to get to the gate and to get through the crowd or pass through the crowd, that was really hard. So, with having of all those difficulties, but I was still trying to get myself and my family inside the airport. We stayed almost more than 12 hours for the whole night by one of the gates to the airport. It was kind of scary because Taliban was just firing. They were beating people. It was crowded also. On the other side, the weather was really hot. So then I thought, told myself that Sayed, you're not going to be able to make it because there are too many crowds and also the Taliban on the other side. So I was seeing the U.S. Marine, they were on Britain, the first gate were the Taliban, the second gate were also the Taliban, the third were the U.S. Marines, so which nobody was able to cross the first 2 gates to get to U.S. Marines. So I turned back home, and then we start, I and Valentina, we start talking, so she needed some of the information, which was the name, Tascaras, and passports, and some more of the documents that they were required. So I sent her. Then it was a few days later that she texted me and said, can you go to this gate? It was early in the morning, and you need to have just something that I think was already coordinated between Valentina and the U.S. Marines. I need to have something that they should recognize me. But I told her that this is impossible because thousands of people are in there and nobody is going to allow me to cross them and get at least somewhere that the U.S. Marine saw me. So she said that she was going to organize somehow, was maybe send a car outside of the airport that we can be taken to the airport directly, and which it happened, which it really happened. And finally, I think it was August 24th that we got to the international airport, Kabul International Airport, and that was all. And we just flew to Qatar on the same day.
What about you, Afzal? Where were you on the 15th of August?
Well, first of all, I would like to say Sayed is one of the toughest human beings I've ever met.
Your
Yeah.
your audio is not good. There you go.
Is it good now?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Just to repeat myself, Sayed is one of the toughest human beings I've ever met. Getting out of that situation with a family like that, it's I cannot even think about it. I was one person, and I think for me it was way easier. The process was way smoother than it was for Sayed and a lot of other families with kids. What I remember, I think coming here to US now, thinking back on it, I am missing chunks of my memories for some reason. I don't know, maybe it was the refugee camp that took a toll on me. But yeah, if I were to think about it, what I remember, the first thing would be talking to Anna when things started falling apart. Anna and I were in communication for a long time. I had applied to SIV, I think, at the end of 2015. And then by the end of the 2015, they announced that the eligibility from 1.5 year, I think, went to 2 years or something like that. So that made it difficult for me to be eligible for the SIV process. So, and then also I was missing a couple of documents, such as my letter of recommendation, and that's how Anna and I got connected through a friend of mine. Coming back to the day of evacuation, I think the last thing I remember is sending a picture of myself in blue shirt to Anna, so she could forward it to a guy named Lucky who was picking people up over the wall to get them into the airport. And that blue shirt had a really pessimistic message on it saying nothing changes. I don't know, Anna, if you remember it or not. Yeah. So I went to the airport and I saw what the situation was like. People were like passing out because of how hot it was, the tear gas, the constant gunfire, the beating. People pushed from the backside towards the gate, and then people pushed back from the gate towards the outside. People got trampled. I saw that situation and I was like, there's no way I'm getting through this. So I gave up, came back, and I think I fell asleep because I was so depressed. And then in the evening, again, I would like to mention that, as Anna and Val spoke earlier, that it's a really difficult situation to choose who to save, or who to say yes to, or who to make a promise, because as a human being it's very difficult to make a promise. It's very risky. I felt that situation when I was on the bus and people were trying to force their way in to the bus, saying that please take me. I'm the one holding on to a passport that I did not recognize, that wasn't on the list. But yeah, I got a message from Anna saying that these are the details of the bus, this is the pickup location, and you're going to be leading the bus. We'll have to make sure that the people that we have on the list with the passport numbers and the SIV case numbers are on the bus. And we're not able to have extra people on the bus. We would love to, but those are the orders. That is the accommodation, because they will be verified at the gate. And then if we have extra people at the gate, that might, interrupt the process. So, yeah, we got onto the bus. We drove to the pickup location, and for some reason I think the pickup location was shared with public. Somebody had leaked it. We were supposed to meet, I think, how many families were we supposed to pick up?
There's supposed to be like 50 people on the bus?
50 people on the bus. And I remember picking up the first family. They had one extra person with them, and it was really difficult to reason with them that these are the people that are on the list. As a human being, I felt for them, but as a person of responsibility that was given to me, it was, I had to But then I communicated with Anna and Val, and they said we will work something out. Let's go forward and pick up the rest of the families. So as we move forward to the second stop, instead of 8 or 7 people, a family member, we get like 500 people. They tried to force their way into the bus. At first, I tried to control it. I tried to shout, saying, "I need this person. This person is on the list. If you're not on the list, you're not getting on the bus." But that didn't do anything. I almost got choked by one person, which was pretty funny now thinking about it. Yeah.
Funny may not be the word that I would use to describe almost getting choked, but I'd like to hear more about this.
That woman still screaming.
Yeah. So then I think there was a short video clip. One of the families, I think, took a video of it, like the chaos that we had in the bus. And they tried to, like, the group tried to push their way in, and I wasn't able, like, I wanted to get out of the bus, get off the bus, but I couldn't because they were, like, flooding in like water. And they pushed me all the way to the back door. Thankfully, there was a back door. And I was like screaming my lungs out, saying, open the door so I can get out. And the driver was in complete shock. He didn't know what to do. So finally, when he opens the door, I get off the bus, and then the Talibans arrive to the scene. They investigate, and they already know that people were getting on these buses, and they were taken to the airport. So they were looking for that kind of situation. And they were shouting, I heard them, it's like, where's the guy who's leading the bus? And some people gave up my identity, saying there was this kid with a blue shirt. So I'm at the back of the bus. I get in the taxi, lay in the back seat, and the taxi driver is asking me, like, where are we going? It's like, just drive, and then I'll tell you where to go. So in those days, I had some internal family issues, and I wasn't able to go home. I used to go home on weekends, but I couldn't. So my employer, and that time, was generous enough to offer me accommodation at the place I was teaching. And I came back to that place, communicated the situation to Anna and Val. And so we waited for the next best opportunity, and the next best step was to organize a small convoy of personal vehicles that the families had, or they could borrow it from the neighbors, and get them together in a line of, I remember Val stressing the point over and over again, bumper to bumper. There has to be no space between the cars so the third party doesn't push in. And yeah, that's how I remember my phone was about to die before we got to the gate. It was at 4 or 5%. And right about when we got to the gate, it just died. But I was able to send the message that we are at the gate. So yeah, thankfully we got in. And that was the journey before we got to the airport, and everybody was so happy. I was screaming. My friends were like, "Yeah, we made it. We're done. We're safe." But then inside the airport, I don't know. I don't remember his name. I think it was Dave that took us to a specific spot where we were waiting for. They said a chartered plane, or a plane that is for us, and they'll call out our names, and then we'll get on the plane, and then we'll leave. But I don't know, the time just stretched out. I think Anna, we ended up waiting there for like a day and a half or something like that.
The longest.
Yeah. People started leaving, and as everybody left, you just get this sinking feeling in your stomachs, like, oh, maybe we're not gonna leave. And yeah, that was, I think, those 2 days, a day and a half, were like the toughest days of that journey. But then when we got on the planes, got to Qatar, and from Qatar to Washington DC, from there to Donna Anna camp in El Paso, that was prioritize that.
I'd love to hear more about that later, but before we do that, I want to hear Val and Anna, I want to hear you guys talk about the work that went into organizing all of those pieces from the United States. You know, how did you find a path where Afzal and Sayed and everyone could get to the airport? Because I know that there was no, you know, hey, volunteers who are doing our jobs for us, here's how you can make this work. Like, you guys were finding ways to make this work. So can you tell our listeners and viewers that process?
That's you, Val.
So like we stated, the first couple days we were kind of just freaking out and so feeling hopeless, filling out evacuation request form after evacuation request form for anybody that would contact us, and people started contacting us nonstop during those days, and we started networking. I started trying to contact all of my veteran military people friends. Veterans started reaching out to me somehow, reaching out to Anna. We started connecting with people, seeing how people were getting people in. You know, people just focused on their interpreters. Hey, do you have a way to get in? It all started like that. A couple of days after, through social media, we started noticing that some veterans were able to get their interpreters into the airport by knowing someone in there. And my husband Andy, he is a recon Marine, or he was in the Marine Corps. He was a recon Marine, then GRS agent, and I know that community small, and so I told him, I was like, you have to know someone that knows a team or somebody in there. Like, let's start contacting everybody. And he reached out to a good friend of ours. We call him Uncle Frank. He just retired, awesome, badass recon Marine. And he runs a pretty big Instagram page with thousands of followers. And he made a post saying, hey, does anybody know anybody or a team inside of the airport? My buddy Andy and his wife are trying to get some interpreters through. And within like an hour or so, he was receiving messages from other recon Marines saying, hey, I know a team here, I know a guy here. And so we started trying to connect until we landed a signal number to a recon Marine inside of the airport. And I'm sure he was getting other people, you know, he was like, are you sure these people are SIV? Do you have proof? And Anna, here's the Excel queen. She had we started organizing everybody's cases by folders, lists. Everything was so organized. He was so impressed. He's like, all right, this is great. This looks legit. And so at first he told us about this interpreter, Lucky, that was working along U.S. Marines, retrieving people from the crowds. But as Sayed said, that got dangerous pretty quickly at Abbey Gate because the crowd just grew during those 3 days. So by the time that we wanted to send our people to Lucky, it was impossible for him to even get back through. And so we continued talking to Dave, and he's like, hey, can you get a van with your interpreters and their families in, and can you meet us at this location? It's a different gate. Now, this gate, I believe, was at the north of the airport. It was called the Black Gate. And it wasn't known at the time. You know, no one really knew about this gate. And so he told us to organize a van. And so we're like, all right, let's get the biggest van we could. And so somehow one of the interpreters on my list, I started asking all of them, like, hey, do you guys know where we can rent a big van? And one of them said, I can get a charter bus. And it was like the middle of the night. I'm like, great, get that bus. So we planned out this location. It was like a wedding hall in the middle of somewhere Kabul. Me and Anna started going through a list and seeing who could fit in this van by who had passports. You know, we kind of had to come up with kind of like a triage system where we got everybody on that list and we started seeing like who has the biggest chance to get on a plane if we were to put them through.
Yeah.
So
we
it was who
didn't
has
know what the
passports.
situation was going to be, like if they were going to get through. So we really wanted to make sure that we gave everybody was approved SIVs, and some
Everyone,
even had visas
you know,
already
people have
issued
it,
from
yeah.
the U.S. government.
We didn't want anybody having issues, things like that. And so we had to make those decisions. We came up with the families. Afzal was put in charge of this list. We sent him the list of the people and we said, hey, you're going to be in charge. Make sure everybody's there. Sayed was one of them. Meet this bus. We took pictures of the driver, of the license plate. We were very clear, like, hey, this is just for you and your family. You cannot tell anybody about this location. So they got to the bus, and someone somewhere leaked the location, or people saw the bus and thought, hey, this is going to the airport. But by the time our families got there, there was a huge crowd around the bus. And they saw him with a list, and then people started rushing the bus, and that's what Afzal was talking about. That was our first attempt. Sayed called me because he got stuck in the bus for a couple streets, and Taliban got there, and he's like, ma'am, this did not work out. The crowds rushed the bus, and so Anna and I were freaking out. We're like, abort mission, just go back to a safe place. We're trying to come up with something new. And
The Taliban actually, they threatened the bus driver. They said, if you drive to the airport, we'll kill
We're
you.
gonna kill you.
So
And so we
you're gonna
lost our
take
charter
this
bus.
And he's like, get out of here, like, I'm done,
Yeah.
like, see you.
We lost the charter bus, and I remember I told Anna, I was like, I can't do this because we're gonna get someone hurt. And I was so close to just shutting my computer. I was about to be like, I'm sorry, I can't do anything. I'm gonna get someone. And that Marine, that recon Marine was like, he was the one that was like, all right, we'll plan something else. Don't worry, I'm gonna get them through. And I was like, all right, let's plan something else. And then that whole night, well, it was day here, but that whole night in Afghanistan, we planned a small convoy. And by that time, Anna was in contact with several Army guys who were drawing out maps from satellite images. And they were drawing routes.
They were active duty military, so they had access to kind of live satellite images.
Right, so
of
they were
what was-
drawing routes for us to take that were safe without any checkpoints that they were aware of to get to the airport. And
But Afzal did have a checkpoint. You want to tell them about your checkpoint, Afzal?
Yeah, we got stopped at one of the places before we could get to the airport, and I was in the front vehicle. When we were getting to the checkpoint, as we neared the checkpoint, I knew that for some reason the Taliban's, they don't investigate women and children. They don't ask questions, and I was like, turn on the lights so they can see the women and children. And one of them was like, what's going on? Where are you headed in this, like, this whole convoy? My answer was like, well, people were afraid because of the war, and they took shelter in the national park in Kabul. And now the war is over. You've won, and we're going back home. And that was that. They had green tea and everything. They were just chilling there, and then they let us go. Yeah. And that wedding hall was called Oranus Wedding Hall. I remember it. That was the pickup location, the famous wedding hall. Yeah.
yeah. And yeah, that Marine was the one that was like, no, we'll don't worry, I'll get them through. And so we organized, and he did. He met them at the Black Gate, and the few first cars were able to get in. We had one car that was left out. They had to close the gates because people were getting riled up. But we had very specific, Dave, or that Marine, told us very specific things that we had to do once we got there. He was like, hey, as soon as you get there, you need to get bumper to bumper. Do not let the crowds get in between you. close the windows, lock your doors, don't be scared, just keep pushing through slowly, don't stop. We're gonna, kind of scare the crowds away with what was it, gas? Was it some type of loud bangs or something? And so he was like, just tell the people in the cars not to be scared and just to keep driving straight until they're through the gate. So that was
one of the families that we had on that list for the first night. They had tried to go through the gate on their own before, and they had gotten separated. So their daughter had gotten taken in, and they were still outside. So they had the daughter was like 4 or 5 years old, and she was alone inside, and they had been trying to get in for 3 or 4 days to be reunited with their daughter. And
that
so
was like one of our main people we
Canadian
wanted to get
military
in.
supervisor of this interpreter was like, you have to get this family like in, like this girl is by herself somewhere. The U.S. government had no track of where she had, if she was still in Afghanistan, if she had been like flown on to Qatar, or where she was. So he was one of the families that was on the list that night. And then there was other families like of cases I had worked on that ended up showing up to that wedding hall, and they knew my name. So they had told Afzal, like, we know Anna, like, let us in. But they were people that their SIV cases hadn't been approved yet, so I hadn't put them on the list because I was like worried about them getting turned around later on.
Right, that was one of our main concerns. And I mean, once Afzal and the rest of the families got in, we were celebrating. And then we were like, and then they're like, okay, what happens now? And then Anna and I were like, I don't know, you're in the airport. And then we started freaking out. We're like, how are we going to get these people manifested? So again, we started calling people up, organizations. We're like, how can we get these people on, on planes? And as Afzal was saying, he was probably the one that stayed in waiting the longest for a couple days. And I remember him texting me saying, they're just taking families and kids and women. I'm gonna be left behind because I'm a single male. And he was so worried that he was gonna be left behind because, he was alone and they were just taking families in and being manifested. But I think during those days I got in contact with some Air Force, someone got on the phone with me and he was like, don't worry, everybody's gonna get out of here. We'll make sure no one gets stayed here before we leave. I mean, but this was before the whole chaos, which it's a whole other, yeah.
I'd like to know, so Afzal, you applied for SIV in 2015. What about you, Sayed? When did you apply?
I applied on 2011. Yes. Well, actually, I applied in 2009. At that time, there was no COM approval with Chief of Mission approval. So that time, when a person was supposed to apply for SIV, he had to go through too many steps. Like he had to have a letter of recommendation from his supervisor. Then it was going chain of command to get approved by a former colonel, then by a general from the United States, which was an active on duty in Afghanistan. So I had a case on that. Then in 2011, we received emails that the general case, we were calling that the general case is not going to be more valuable, so you have to apply for Chief of Mission, COM approval. Which I applied for Chief of Mission, and unluckily it got denied, but I still had the other case. So I got married in 2014, and I added my wife, so it took me a whole process to upload the whole requirement documents like marriage certificate, passport for my wife, and too many other steps. So it took me longer and longer up to 2016. In 2016, I had my first child, so I had to add her on the list, and I had to wait for another long process. Uh, Back in 2020, my friends were just telling me from United States that he said, go ahead, do not wait for the withdrawal case is gonna be like taken too long. Apply for COM approval again, and I did apply for COM approval. It was 2020. I received an email I'm not sure, but I think it was June 2021, that they sent me the time and date of my interview in U.S. Embassy back in Kabul, Afghanistan. The date was September 2020 and September 21st of 2021. So, luckily, I was out of Afghanistan, even my interview date for the visa.
Oh my goodness. So you had been waiting on that SIV for basically 10 years by the time
10
that
years.
you were taken to Qatar. What was it like when you arrived, in those refugee camps? Do you want to start, Afzal, and tell me, because you say, you kind of lost periods of that memory. Why was that for you?
I think it was the grasshoppers and the insects, or the sandstorms that we had there. My God, yeah. They didn't have a mail delivery system. Anna and Val were trying to send me a package like clothes and books and stuff. I had my backpack. Packing my backpack, I was like, it wasn't the smart decision not to pack any clothes, but all books in a backpack. And I had that only backpack, and I lost it. I checked it in at an airport, like a connecting flight, and I didn't get it until the day before I was leaving the camp, the refugee camp. So it's just one day before leaving. Tomorrow it was my flight, and today they say, well, I think we have this backpack. It doesn't have a tag on it or anything. Would you come to take a look and see? It has a lot of books in it. And I was like, yep, that's the one.
Tell him what the Marine said when they checked you in, when
Where?
you got to Ishkaya.
Uh-huh. Oh,
When
yeah.
you made,
Yeah. That Echkaya was a crazy experience too. I stayed there for 2 days, and the families that I was with, they had kids. And looking at them, sometimes one of them would say something that would just boost my confidence, saying like, "Oh, we're gonna get out of here." But then somebody would say like, "I don't think we're gonna make it out of here. I think we'll just end up going back out, and there's no space for us." And then on the second night, I had given up. I was actually thinking about, going back out or leaving. But then a guy wakes me up, one of the family members, saying, Afzal, there's this American soldier. If you could just go and talk to him. And I was like, I don't think it's going to change anything. We've spoken to a lot of people here, and they just tell us, wait, your turn will come. And he's like, no, I think he's an officer or a high-ranking person. I still don't know what his rank was. I think he did introduce himself to Anna over the phone. So I went to him, like dragging my feet, lazy and all given up. And I say, we're SIV applicants. We have our case numbers, our documents, letter of recommendations, and everything. We've been waiting here for the past 2 days, but we're still waiting for our charter plane. And he was like, well, do you know anybody in the US that can confirm that can talk to us? I was like, yeah, I know multiple people. I know Val, I know Anna, I had her number. and I just dialed the number, and I was able to speak to them that yes, we've been working with these people for years on their cases, and they need to leave the country. So that was, yeah. And then they gave us these wristbands, these white wristbands, and I was like, what is this? And it's like, this is your ticket out of here.
Yeah.
It's incredible that
I was
that
gonna say
networking
when,
is.
when Afzal showed up, like, because he would always talk to me about that he read this book or he read that book, and he liked to play music, and he would, like, record songs on his guitar that I would see him post in social media. And so when he went into the airport, he had this bag full of books, and the one soldier, like, the American soldier was like, what, are you starting a bookstore here? Like, what are you doing?
Like, where are your
You're building a
clothes?
country
What are all these
bag of
Like,
Yeah, I was like, I'm gonna hoard all of these books and then sell them on a really high price when there are none.
I would rather
Um,
have books with me than several changes of clothes, I think, to keep myself sane, honestly. That probably would have been my.
Yeah, and I actually made really good friends on that. On like now, when looking back on it, I know it was a really tough time, but I've learned so much about myself and like how does my body operate under pressure, what to do, what not to do, and it just adds a lot to myself as a person. And throughout the journey, I met 2 or 3 people that share the journey with me and their struggles, and we're really good friends now. We spent the time together in the Donna Ana camp in El Paso, New Mexico, which was difficult. We didn't know where to go. When we got to the Washington D.C., everybody was saying Virginia, the camp in Virginia is really good. They have good rooms, good food, phone service, internet, and everything. Some said, people are going there. Others said Texas is good. And we just got on a bus that took us to a plane, and they said that you are going to El Paso, New Mexico. We got there, and then during the daytime it would be like really hot, extremely hot, and then at night it would be like really cold. And the tents, they would get really cold at night. And then we would have sandstorms. I remember actually sleeping in those portable, I would call them washrooms, that were like really sealed. I remember once sleeping in there and locking it up because it was sealed, and you didn't get any dust inside compared to the tents that were like just flying in the air. So yeah, it was a pretty bumpy ride. I also downloaded a lot of TV shows from websites to watch it. Yeah.
I'm glad that you found ways to get through, because I imagine that would be really, really difficult for so many different reasons. And then, Sayed, you had your children with you and your wife. How was that for you guys being in the refugee camp situation?
Honestly, the first day that we got to the airport, as I said, that we had a newborn baby, so we stayed on the sunshine for quite long hours, like 8 or 9 hours. My wife was just keep telling me, let's go back home, let's go back home. And I was like, we have made it so far, so why are you concerned, and what are you thinking about? And she was saying that when she was looking at the people with kids all around, the sun, we had no place even to sit. We were sitting on the desk in the airport, and she was like, I'm sure I cannot make it because of the kids. So my oldest kid was 5, the other was almost 2, and the little one was just newborn. And so we were lucky because we made it out of the airport at the end of the first day that we got to the airport, to Qatar. Yeah, when we got to Qatar, it was in the middle of the night. So they told us that we had to go and stay in the queue to get to do the biometric system, to do the whole procedure. And people were just trying to get first, to the first of the line, and somehow they don't want to waste their time, so they're just pushing each other, even jumping over the other people. And the luckiest part that I had some luggages, just clothes and diapers for the kids. That were all we had. But my son, I was just running out behind him to bring him back to the queue because he was just running away. So we stayed there. Trust me, we stayed there and for 24 hours on the queue to go and do the biometric system or the biometric procedure. You shouldn't have to go to sleep because somebody will come and take your place. Because we had other planes that were landing and more people were coming and staying on the line. So it was really tough for me because I didn't even sleep for 2 nights and 2 days just taking care of the kids. My wife was sick. She wasn't able to take care of the kids. On the other side, you have to be more careful that somebody should not steal your stuff and that type of situation. And I had to keep myself awakened, and I had to bring more energy, and I was encouraging myself to say, you gotta be brave and you have to make it. So we passed the biometric process or a stage, I have to say. Then somebody knew that I speak English, and they were just coming to me, can you help us do the biometric, because most of the people from Afghanistan, they don't know English and we were having a hard time. And there was no official interpreter assigned to help the people. And we stayed back in Qatar for 7 days, which was kind of like, now when I talk about Qatar, I see and I feel it how hard it was. But the harder that we got a flight and we came to Germany. Since it was very hot in Qatar, and we came and landed to Germany, it was raining, it was pretty cold in there. So they just took us in a very huge tent. They placed almost over 500 people in there. Since the weather was really cold, no blankets, no beds, there were nothing that people could use. And I was the only person that going and asking for blankets for the kids and any kind of like jackets, socks, things like that. The only answer that I was receiving, you have to go get back to your pod. Somebody will come and help you out with that. And we spent 47 days in Germany. 47 days. We were just being told that you guys are gonna fly to the United States soon. You guys are gonna fly to the United States soon. Somehow, I think CDC banned the flights from Germany because of the chicken pox and stuff like that. They said that we're gonna send vaccination. Everybody has to get the shots before they enter the United States. So it took us 47 days. And then, well, actually, back to your question. I think I have to say that we made it, but I had really tough time, especially when I was in Germany.
Tell them about how the general that you worked with spotted you in Germany.
I used to work for a guy. He was a forward colonel in 2023 back in Afghanistan. So I received a letter of recommendation from him in 2003. But in Germany, 2021, and I was like, when I look at the guy with the 4-star general, and I was like, I know this guy. And when I read the name, he's Meli. Oh, I know him. So I just wanted to get to him, but people surrounding him, they didn't even let me to go in there, and I was like, I need to talk to this guy. And they were, what do you want to say? And I was like, I know him. And they were like, how do you know him? I said, I used to work for him back in Afghanistan, even in 2003. Trust me, he was kind of like, even I have to say like 15 to 20 meters away, but there was a guy, so he told me, stay right here. So he went to him, told him the whole story that I told him, so he just walked toward me. The first thing that he said, any proof? And I said, yeah, I do have a letter of recommend, certificate of appreciation from you, which is in the tent, not with me, it is in my bag. He said, can you bring it? We're gonna wait. So I showed him and he was shocked because he was shocked because he saw me after like 19 years, something like that. And all he could do that time was appreciating me and thanking me for the service that I did, and he rewarded me a pine medal, his name, and one of his aides did the same thing to me too. He awarded me medal coins. I still have them, and I will keep them.
Wait, who is it again, Sayed?
General Mark Maley, he is the Joint Chief of Army, or the Army, I don't know how to say that. It might be the
Right.
Chief of Army Staff.
Chairman.
Chief of Army Staff.
Yeah, it's a name I've heard quite a lot associated with the withdrawal, I do believe.
Yeah.
Not necessarily in such glowing terms, though, before. So I'm glad that that experience sounds
And now-
amazing. But it also reminds you, too, you know, there are people that I know, Anna, you've probably seen this in Val way more than I have, but who are trying to reach out to supervisors who might not remember them because they've worked with a number of interpreters, and it's been, you know, we were there 20 years, so it could have been 18 years, and you had the man's signature on your documents, and you had to show him to have him be reminded. And I think that's a really important point to bring out here. You know, these SIV cases and everything like that, people can say, oh, well, you know, you just don't have a letter of recommendation, but that doesn't really mean much.
And one thing to be pointed out on in regards to SIV processes, so we still have people, I have connection with the people that they worked and they served with the U.S. military for over years and years. But somehow they were terminated from their work by a contracting company, which was Mission Essential Personnel. So the reason for the termination is completely hidden. Nobody says the exact reason. Some people are, it's written in their background, mission refusal. So when he was working as an interpreter, and there was a mission that he had to be deployed, and he refused it because of family issues, because of wives, kids, and many other things. So they terminated him from the job, and then he was blacklisted. Then some other people kind of like accusations. Afzal knows this a lot. That we do have a lot of racism issues back in my country. So, and accusations, polls, and stuff like that, and they were being terminated. So when they were being terminated, they were not eligible and they did not qualify to get their visa to the United States only because of a very minor mistake, though they served 10 years. I do have a friend, he served 6 years continuously with honor, with respect, and to the best of his ability. But finally, after 6 years, he failed the polygraph. So after he failed the polygraph, he was terminated from his job. And he did not qualify to apply for SIV, which is really stupid to me and insane. Now he's in Afghanistan, he does not have a job, he lives with his family. and he's concerned what is going to happen to him tomorrow. So that was an example, and I hope, I hope that this can help, that should be brought up to mission missions or personnel, that they have to remove people out of their blacklist that we still have in Afghanistan.
Sure. There are so many issues with the SIV program, but that is a huge one, and I've heard from many people who were in similar situations, and it breaks your heart. I want to ask before we close, because I have a feeling we could talk, and maybe we should revisit and keep telling the story of, the refugee experience and the transitional experience, because I really want to hear about those things. But for this episode, Val and Anna, how many people were you able to get out from your list? And then how many people are still in Afghanistan from that list that you had?
Do you remember the number, Anna? Oh, we can't hear you.
I think it was 56 people
Okay.
that we got out between the two different nights. But since then, I have lots and lots of cases that I've been working on, that very few of them have actually come to the United States. I'd say maybe 5 or something
Since
have come since then.
we continued
Right.
working after the 31st, and we helped several other families. I think I had 3 other families that were successful those first couple, maybe weeks, months after that, where it was very fresh still, and charter flights were in and out kind of thing. And then that kind of just stopped, and everyone forgot about it.
And just for listeners who aren't aware, care flights now are postponed. So the few flights that we're getting out with SIV applicants or green card holders or U.S. citizens and their family members, and by that I mean maybe their parents but not their siblings. I digress. The point is, those flights are not happening anymore, and they were barely happening to begin with. So that means, Anna, you probably have hundreds of cases that are still stuck in Afghanistan right now, because you said you had 150 at the outset, 100 plus, I would say.
Yeah, most people who've been getting out have been through Pakistan. They're people who had enough money to take themselves to Pakistan and be able to afford to live without working for an indefinite period of time, and can get their interviews and all their process done in Pakistan.
Well, this was so many different highs and lows, and Afzal, it was great to hear about the learning experience that you went through. And Sayed, I'm so glad that your kids are here. I think my son was about a year old when all of this happened, and I can't imagine having a 9-day-old at the time of that.
Yeah, we had 2
intense,
newborns.
yeah.
There was Sayed's baby, and then another family had another newborn, and I was terrified they were going to die on the tarmac, and that we would be responsible for putting these families in that situation.
And I think that's the big thing to remember here too is, Val and Anna, this wasn't your job. However, amazing things happened because you were dogged and didn't give up, and Afzal, you got out of that charter bus
I think people say that, Sayed and I went through a tough time of this journey, but I think Anna and Val went through the toughest time, because when you're far away from that situation, all you can do is to be virtually present through a text message, and sometimes that doesn't even go through. You don't get a response from that person. They don't have an internet, or they just lose their phone. And I think that's the toughest position to be in. And also the time difference, night here, daytime there, then night here. It's very difficult. I remember messaging, sending really tough messages to Anna and Val, and I never thought that how it would affect them, saying that, I don't know what's going to happen to me. the effect that had on Anna emotionally and mentally, and Val. I never thought of it, and I am ever grateful for their help and support in that tough situation. And I also have the list. I have a printed copy of it. I don't know, at some point, yeah, it was in my bag, and I think somebody spilled coffee on it in those containers and water and stuff, but it still survived. I have it. I'm gonna make a copy of it and then send it to you guys in the mail.
Aw, that's amazing. I
And
wanna see that.
the interesting thing about that list is all of the participants, all of the people that were on the bus or were supposed to get out. I went through the list, and all of them had approved SIV cases. There was one guy that didn't have an approved SIV case, and that had an expired passport, and that was me on the top of the list.
He was very, very worried when he was getting through the gate. I mean, he was like, please make sure I get through. My passport's expired. I'm like, you're there, you're gonna get through. And then he went radio silent for I don't know how long, until he's like, okay, I'm in. And we're like, okay. And then, it was highs and lows.
It's incredible
But
everything that you guys went through.
yeah, we got to US. I had actually, Anna, I had sent an email before this whole thing started. I had sent out an email to the British Embassy, because the organization that I was working with was indirectly linked to the British Council. And so I had sent out an email for help. It's like if they're able to help, like I was desperate. And then when I got here to Seattle, after 2 or 3 days, I received an email saying, we would like to help you if you like still want to get out. And I was like, I'm not gonna respond to it. I'm gonna make you wait at least 6 or 7 months and then respond to it.
Only fair. Oh my gosh, there's so much here. I mean, we could just keep plumbing this, but I am gonna say thank you all for all of these stories. I feel like I've learned a lot listening to all of you. Before we close, I want to once again make a plea to all of our listeners. Michael and I always want to add voices from Afghans who've lived this war in every episode, and obviously today we have Afzil and Sayed right here. But we like to always close with a letter from an Afghan who's still in Afghanistan or in a third country. So if you are listening and you want to tell us about your experience, prior to the collapse of Afghanistan, or that's what I'm going to call it, the Taliban's takeover, or during the withdrawal or after in the last 2 years, please send it to our show address, which is the Afghanistan Project Podcast at gmail.com. And once again, Anna, Val, Afzal, Sayed, thank you so much for joining and just telling these very human stories about what happened during the withdrawal.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, sharing your space with us.
It was my pleasure, and I know Michael feels the same way, and he is extending those sentiments from far away. Thank you to all of our listeners for joining us today and supporting the people of Afghanistan. Tasha Kaur, and we hope to see you again soon.